My dad kicked me out on Christmas Eve to make room for his new wife's kids. He said, "I have a new family now, there's no room for you anymore." So I left. But the next morning, something happened that turned his life upside down. Well, let's go. My name is Marielle and I'm 20 years old. I was driving home for Christmas break from college, and I couldn't wait to see my dad. The radio was playing some cheesy Christmas songs, but I didn't care. I was just excited to be going home. My dad and I had this tradition. Every Christmas Eve we'd sit together in the living room, drink hot chocolate, and look through our old family photo albums. We'd talk about Mom and remember all the good times we had together before she died in that plane crash 2 years ago. It was hard at first, but these Christmas talks helped us both deal with losing her. Dad had taken Mom's death pretty hard. He threw himself into his work and barely talked to anyone for months after the funeral. But slowly he started coming around. He'd call me at college every week, asking how my classes were going and if I needed anything. He seemed lonely, but I figured that was normal. Losing the person you love most in the world has to mess you up pretty bad. I pulled into our driveway around 6 in the evening. The house looked different somehow, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Maybe Dad had put up new Christmas lights or something. I grabbed my suitcase from the trunk and walked up to the front door, fishing for my keys in my purse. That's when things got weird. I stuck my key in the lock and turned it, but nothing happened. The lock wouldn't budge. I tried again, thinking maybe I was just tired from the drive, but the key definitely wasn't working. I stood there for a minute, confused. Dad had never changed the locks before. I knocked on the door and waited. I could hear footsteps inside, and then the door opened. A woman I'd never seen before stood there looking at me. She was maybe 30, with blonde hair and this stern expression on her face. She was wearing an apron like she'd been cooking something. "What do you need?" she asked, not exactly friendly. I just stared at her for a second. This is my father's house. Marielle. I came home for Christmas vacation." Her whole face changed. The stern look disappeared, and she broke into this big smile, but it felt fake somehow. "Oh my goodness. You're Marielle," she said like she was talking to a little kid. "I'm Tanya, your father's new wife. He went to the store, but he'll be back soon. Come in, come in." New wife. I felt like someone had just punched me in the stomach. Dad got married. When? Why didn't he tell me? I walked into the house in a daze, dragging my suitcase behind me. Everything looked the same but different. There were new pictures on the walls, different curtains, stuff that definitely wasn't ours. "I'll just go up to my room," I said, heading for the stairs. "Oh, honey, you should wait for your father down here in the living room," Tanya said, stepping in front of me. "Your room is... well, it's occupied right now." "Occupied?" "Yes." "By who?" "Just come sit down and wait for your dad. He can explain everything." I didn't know what else to do, so I left my suitcase by the stairs and followed her into the living room. I sat down on our old couch and Tanya sat down right next to me, way too close for comfort. "I know this must be a shock," she said, still with that fake smile. "But your father and we fell in love the moment we met. It was like something out of a movie. We got married 2 weeks ago. It was a small ceremony, just the two of us and my boys. I have 2 sons, Noah and Eli. They're 8 and 10. Such sweet kids. Your father absolutely adores them already." That's when I heard it. Kids screaming and running around upstairs. Loud thumping noises like they were jumping on furniture. "Those are my babies," Tanya said with a laugh. "They're so excited to be living in a real house now. We were in this tiny apartment before, and now they have so much room to play." "Where exactly are they playing?" "Yes." "Oh, your father fixed up your old room for them. He painted it blue and bought them bunk beds and everything. He even got them new toys and video games. He's such a wonderful stepfather already." I couldn't breathe. My room. The room where I grew up. Where I'd done homework and talked on the phone with friends and cried about Mom. Where I kept all my stuff, all my memories, gone. Where am I supposed to sleep? "Yes." "Well, honey, you'll have to talk to your father about that. I'm sure you two can work something out. Just then I heard the front door open and close. Dad walked into the living room carrying grocery bags. When he saw me, he didn't smile. He didn't run over and give me a hug like he always did. He just stood there and nodded. "Hi, Marielle. I see you've met Tanya." "Hi, Dad." I stood up, expecting him to at least give me a hug, but he just set the bags down on the coffee table. "Good, that makes this easier." He sat down in his recliner and looked at me like I was a problem he had to solve. "Marielle, you need to understand something. Things have changed around here. I have a new family now and they live here. There's no room for you anymore." I felt like the floor was falling out from under me. "But Dad, it's Christmas Eve. I came home for the holidays. Where am I supposed to go?" Dad shrugged. "That's your problem to figure out. You're 20 years old, Marielle. You're an adult. Adults figure these things out for themselves. Maybe you could get a hotel room," Tanya suggested helpfully. "Or just go back to your dorm. I'm sure it's still open." I looked at my father, waiting for him to tell me this was all some kind of sick joke. That of course I could stay, that we'd still look at photo albums and talk about Mom like we always did. But he just sat there silent. "Can I at least stay here tonight? Just one night until I figure out where to go?" Tanya jumped in before Dad could answer. "Oh, that would be so inconvenient for us. My parents are coming tomorrow and my brother's family and my aunts and uncles. All the rooms are already spoken for. You'd just be in the way. Your things are already packed," she added cheerfully. "I put everything in boxes upstairs. You can take them with you when you go." I walked upstairs on shaky legs. The hallway looked different too. There were family photos on the walls, but they were all of Tanya and her boys. Not a single picture of me or Mom anywhere. I pushed open the door to what used to be my bedroom and almost started crying right there. The walls were painted bright blue now. My old bed was gone, replaced with wooden bunk beds. There were toy cars scattered all over the floor and superhero posters on the walls. It was like I had never existed in this room at all. 3 cardboard boxes sat in the corner. That was it. 20 years of my life packed into 3 boxes. I picked them up one by one and carried them downstairs. Dad and Tanya were talking quietly in the kitchen, but they stopped when they saw me. "Got everything?" Tanya asked brightly. I looked at my father one more time. "Dad, are you really doing this to me on Christmas Eve?" He wouldn't even look at me. "You'll figure it out, Marielle. You always do." That hurt worse than anything Tanya had said. I carried my boxes out to my car and loaded them in the trunk. The whole time, I kept expecting Dad to come running out to tell me he was sorry, that this was all a mistake. But he never came. I sat in my car for a few minutes trying to think. Where was I supposed to go? It was getting dark, and everything would be closed tomorrow for Christmas. I pulled out my phone and started calling relatives who lived in town. First I tried my Aunt Leona, but it went straight to voicemail. Then Uncle Ray, no answer. My cousin Jessie's phone just rang and rang. Finally my Aunt Clarice picked up. "Marielle, hi honey. What's up?" "Hi Aunt Clarice. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm kind of in a bind. Can I stay at your place tonight?" "Oh sweetie, I'm so sorry, but we're not even home. We left this morning to visit Daryl's parents in Florida. We won't be back until after New Year's. Is everything okay?" "Yeah, it's fine. Have a good trip." I hung up and put my head on the steering wheel. Everyone was gone. Everyone had somewhere else to be for Christmas, except me. Then I remembered Grandma Ruth. Dad's mom lived about 2 hours away in the next town over. I hadn't talked to her much lately because Dad always said she was getting old and didn't need to be bothered with our problems. But maybe she could help me. I dialed her number, and she picked up on the second ring. "Marielle, what a wonderful surprise. I was just thinking about you." "Hi, Grandma. Look, I need to ask you something, and it's kind of complicated." "What's wrong, honey? You sound upset." I took a deep breath. "Dad got married 2 weeks ago, and he kicked me out of the house tonight. Said there's no room for me anymore because his new wife and her kids live there now. I don't have anywhere to go." There was silence on the other end for a long moment. That son of mine has lost his damn mind. You get in your car right now and drive here. Do you hear me? Don't you spend one more minute thinking about this. You drive carefully, and I'll have dinner waiting for you. I started crying then. Real tears, not the angry ones I'd been holding back at Dad's house. Thank you, Grandma. I love you, honey. Now get driving. The drive to Grandma's house gave me time to think, but thinking just made me angrier. How could Dad do this to me? How could he remarry without even telling me? And who was this Tanya woman anyway? Where did she come from? By the time I pulled into Grandma's driveway, it was almost 9 o'clock. She must have been watching for me, because she opened the door before I could even knock. "Oh, my sweet girl," she said, pulling me into the biggest hug. "Come inside. You must be starving." Grandma's house always smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. She had a small Christmas tree in the corner with twinkling lights, and the dining table was set for two with her good china. "I made your favorite," she said, leading me to the kitchen. "Pot roast with mashed potatoes. And I've got apple pie in the oven." We sat down to eat, and for the first time all day I felt like I could breathe again. "Now tell me everything," Grandma said. "Start from the beginning." I told her about driving home, about not being able to get in with my key, about Tanya and her kids living in my room. I told her about Dad acting like I was a stranger, like I was just some inconvenience he had to deal with. Grandma listened to everything without saying a word, but I could see her getting madder and madder. "That boy," she finally said, shaking her head. "I raised him better than this. I don't know what's gotten into him. You really didn't know about the wedding?" "Not a word. Your father's been avoiding my calls for months. Every time I tried to talk to him, he said he was too busy with work. I should have known something was up." After dinner, Grandma called her friend Mrs. Waverly, who lived next door to Dad's house. "Ellen, it's Ruth. What do you know about this woman my son married?" "Oh my goodness, you didn't know?" Mrs. Waverly said. "He's been dating her for about 3 months. She moved in with those 2 boys maybe 6 weeks ago. They had a little wedding ceremony 2 weeks ago, but it was just immediate family. I was surprised you weren't there." 3 months. Grandma looked at me. "He's known this woman for 3 months, and he married her?" "The boys are sweet enough," Mrs. Waverly continued, "but they're loud, always running around the yard making noise. And that woman, she drives this big SUV that she parks right in front of everyone's driveway. Very inconsiderate, if you ask me." We talked to Mrs. Waverly for a few more minutes, but she didn't know much else. After Grandma hung up, she immediately dialed Dad's number. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Mom, this isn't really a good time. Michael Dean, you listen to me right now. What in the hell do you think you're doing?" "Mom, please. I can't talk about this now." "Oh, you'll talk about it. You kicked your own daughter out of the house for some woman you barely know. Have you completely lost your mind?" "It's complicated, Mom. You don't understand the situation." "Then explain it to me. And while you're at it, explain why I had to hear about your wedding from the neighbors instead of from you." "I didn't want to bother you, Mom," Dad said on the phone. "I was going to tell you about Tanya later, when things settled down." "Bother me. When you needed money for your business last year, you called me at midnight. But getting married isn't worth bothering me about." I could hear the tension in Dad's voice, even through the phone. "Look, I was afraid you wouldn't like Tanya. She's younger than me, and I thought you'd judge her. So instead, you just cut your own daughter out of your life for a woman you've known for 3 months. Tanya thinks Marielle resents her. She says Marielle would just cause problems between us." Grandma's face was getting red. "Tanya thinks. Who the hell is Tanya to think anything about my granddaughter? Marielle doesn't even know this woman." But Dad had already hung up. Grandma slammed the phone down on the table. "That boy is going to regret this. Mark my words." We spent Christmas Eve talking about everything except Dad and Tanya. Grandma showed me old photo albums I hadn't seen in years. Pictures of Dad when he was little, pictures of her and Grandpa before he died. She made hot chocolate and we watched old Christmas movies until late. But I could tell she was still furious. She kept muttering under her breath about ungrateful sons and gold-digging women. Christmas morning we opened presents and had a nice breakfast. Grandma had somehow managed to get me a few small gifts, even though she didn't know I was coming. She said she always kept extra presents around just in case. Around noon she called Dad again. "Michael, I've been thinking about your behavior all night, and I've made a decision. You want to choose some stranger over your own family. Fine. But don't expect me to leave you anything in my will. I'm taking you out completely." She hung up and turned to me. "Don't worry, honey. Everything I have will go to you now. That house, my savings, everything." He made his choice. I felt bad about that, but I was also touched that Grandma was willing to cut off her own son to support me. A few hours later we heard a car pull up outside. Grandma looked out the window and sighed. "Speak of the devil. Your father's here." Dad came storming up to the front door and started banging on it. "Mom, open up. I need to talk to you." Grandma opened the door but didn't invite him in. "What do you want, Michael?" Dad pushed past Grandma and pointed at me. "You called my mother and filled her head with lies. You're trying to turn my family against me." I told her the truth. "You kicked me out of the house on Christmas Eve. You're just mad that I'm happy again. You can't stand that I found someone after your mother died. You want me to be miserable forever." It hurt. Really hurt. "Dad, I want you to be happy, but you didn't even tell me you were dating someone, let alone that you were getting married. Because I knew you'd react like this. Tanya was right about you. She said you'd be jealous and try to break us up. You came here to manipulate my mother into taking your side." Grandma stepped between us. "That's enough. Don't you dare call your daughter names in my house. She's not a little girl anymore, Mom. She's 20 years old and she needs to grow up. Tanya and I agree that Marielle needs to learn to take care of herself." "Tanya and you agree?" Grandma looked disgusted. "You've known this woman for 3 months, and you're taking her advice about your own daughter?" "Tanya understands me," Dad said defensively. "She makes me happy in ways I haven't been happy since Laura died." "And what about Marielle's happiness? What about your responsibilities as a father?" Dad looked at me with cold eyes. "My responsibility is to my new family now. Tanya's boys need a father figure, and I'm going to be there for them. Marielle's had 20 years of my attention. It's time for me to focus on my stepsons." "So, you're replacing me with them?" I asked quietly. "I'm not replacing anyone," he said. "I'm just making new priorities. And speaking of priorities," he continued, his voice getting colder, "I'm not paying for your college anymore either. Tanya thinks I should spend my money on Noah and Eli instead. They're going to need sports equipment and summer camps and all sorts of things. You can figure out how to pay for your own education." My heart dropped. Dad had promised to pay for all 4 years of college. I only had 2 years left, but they were the expensive ones, with all my major classes. "Don't worry about that," Grandma said quickly. "I'll pay for Marielle's college, every penny." Dad's face turned red. "This is exactly what I was talking about. You're turning my own mother against me." "Nobody turned me against you, Michael," Grandma said. "You did that all by yourself when you chose some woman over your own flesh and blood." Dad looked back and forth between us. "You'll both regret this. Tanya was right when she said I should cut ties with people who don't support my marriage." "Then go," Grandma said quietly. "Go back to your wife and her children. But don't come back here expecting forgiveness." Dad stormed out and slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. I started crying then, really crying like I hadn't since Mom died. "Oh, honey," Grandma said, putting her arms around me. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry he's acting like this. I don't understand what happened to him. He wasn't like this before. Some men lose their minds when they meet the wrong woman," Grandma muttered. "Your grandfather always said that a bad woman can turn a good man into a stranger." The next day, Grandma spent hours on the phone. She called every relative we had, telling them exactly what Dad had done. She called his brother, his sister, his cousins, everyone. By the time she was done, half the family was refusing to speak to Dad. His business partner's wife called to say they were canceling their New Year's party invitation. His brother Tom said he wouldn't be investing in Dad's company expansion like they'd planned. "Let's see how he likes being cut off from his family," Grandma said grimly. I stayed with Grandma through New Year's and then went back to college, but every week she'd call with updates about Dad's situation. "Your Uncle Tom refused to give your father that loan," she reported. "And your Aunt Patricia won't hire Tanya at her office. Nobody in the family wants anything to do with either of them." 2 weeks later she called again. "Mrs. Waverly says there's yelling coming from your father's house all the time now. Tanya screaming at the boys, your father screaming at Tanya. The neighbors are starting to complain." I felt a little bad about that, but mostly I was just hurt and angry. Dad had made his choice. Now he had to live with it. 2 months later, Dad showed up at my college. I was walking out of my psychology class when I saw him standing by the student center, looking uncomfortable in his business suit. "Marielle, we need to talk." I didn't want to talk to him, but I was curious about what he wanted. We went to a little cafe off campus and sat across from each other at a small table. "This is all your fault," he said right away. "Because of you, none of my relatives will talk to me anymore. Uncle Tom won't invest in my business expansion. Aunt Patricia won't hire Tanya. Everyone treats me like I'm some kind of monster." I stirred my coffee and looked at him. He looked older somehow, more tired. "You made your choice, Dad. You chose Tanya and her kids over me. These are just the consequences. My business is struggling because of you. Tanya and I are fighting all the time because we don't have enough money. She keeps threatening to leave me. That's not my problem anymore. Remember, you said I needed to grow up and solve my own problems." Dad's face got red. "You have to fix this, Marielle. Call your grandmother. Tell the family you lied about what happened. Tell them I didn't really kick you out." I got up and left him sitting there alone at the table. 2 years passed. Grandma paid for my college like she promised, and I spent every vacation at her house. I didn't see Dad or talk to him at all during that time, but Grandma kept me updated on his life. "Your father's business is falling apart," she told me during my junior year. "Mrs. Waverly says he's been asking all his friends to hire Tanya, but nobody wants to. She's been staying home with those boys, saying her husband should support his family. How are things with them?" "Yes. Not good. Mrs. Waverly hears shouting from that house almost every night. The boys are running wild, getting in trouble at school. Tanya yells at them constantly." During my senior year, Grandma called with bigger news. "Your father had to sell the house, Marielle. His business completely collapsed. He bought a small apartment across town. And Tanya left him, took the boys and moved back in with her parents. Apparently, she said she didn't sign up to be poor. She left him. Mrs. Waverly says Tanya told the neighbors that your father had promised her a life of luxury. When the money ran out, so did she." Graduation day came in May. Grandma was there in the front row, crying with pride. Uncle Tom came with his family, and Aunt Patricia brought flowers. Half the family showed up to celebrate with me. Dad was there too, but he sat in the very back row by himself. He looked much older now, thinner, wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit right. After the ceremony, he walked over to where I was standing with my family. "Marielle, can I talk to you for a minute?" Dad and I walked away from the crowd. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "Your mother would have been proud. I want to make things right between us. I know I made mistakes. I divorced Tanya. I realized you were right about her." I looked at him carefully. "What do you want, Dad?" "I want my daughter back. I want to be your father again. I got a job working for my friend Steve's construction company. It's not much, but it's honest work. I want us to be a family again. You chose to stop being my father. You can't just decide to start again when your other choice didn't work out. I know I hurt you, but people make mistakes, Marielle. Can't you forgive me?" I thought about it for a long minute. I'm not ready for that, Dad. Maybe someday, but not now. He looked disappointed but nodded. I understand. A few months after graduation, I found a good job at a marketing firm in the city. I rented my own apartment and started my adult life. Grandma was so proud of me, and I made sure to visit her often and bring her little gifts to thank her for everything she'd done. One day, Grandma called with more news about Dad. Your father found some new investors for a business venture. He thinks he can rebuild what he lost. And he's dating someone new too. Her name is Carolyn. She's about his age, works as a nurse. Seems like a decent woman from what Mrs. Waverly says. 6 months later, Grandma invited both me and Dad to dinner at her house. I almost said no, but she asked me as a special favor. Dad looked better when I saw him. He'd gained some weight back and seemed less stressed. We sat around Grandma's dining table, and mostly I just listened while he talked. The new business is going well, he said. We're building custom kitchen cabinets. It's smaller than what I had before, but it's profitable. And Carolyn is wonderful. She's nothing like Tanya. She's kind and honest and doesn't care about money or fancy things. I'd like you to meet her sometime. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. I'm also seeing a therapist, Dad continued. Trying to understand why I made such bad decisions. Why I chose a woman I barely knew over my own daughter. That surprised me. Dad had never been the type to admit he needed help. The therapist says I was so desperate not to be alone after your mother died that I ignored all the red flags about Tanya. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I hope maybe someday we can have some kind of relationship again. I looked at this man who used to be my hero, who had broken my heart completely, who was now trying to put his life back together. Maybe, I said softly. Someday. But it's going to take time. Dad nodded. I understand. I'll wait as long as it takes. Now I'm doing well in my career. I have my own apartment, good friends, and a life I'm proud of. I visit Grandma every few weeks and always bring her something special to show my gratitude for saving me when I had nowhere else to go. Dad and I exchange emails sometimes, and we see each other at family gatherings at Grandma's house. We're polite to each other, but we're not close like we used to be. Maybe we never will be again, but I'm okay with that. I learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can hurt you the worst. And I learned that real family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stand by you when everything falls apart. I've decided to start a new life without you. The words hung in the air of the upscale restaurant where we'd gathered to celebrate my daughter's college graduation. Desmond, my husband of 28 years, stood with his champagne glass still raised. His announcement displacing the toast he was supposed to be making to Zara's achievements. The clinking of silverware ceased. Conversations halted mid-sentence. 50 pairs of eyes darted between Desmond and me, waiting for my reaction. For the tears, the shouting, the dramatic exit everyone expected. Instead I smiled. Congratulations on your honesty. My name is Leora Baines. I am 54 years old, and until this moment, I had been playing the role of the devoted wife and mother perfectly. I put my own career aspirations on hold to support Desmond through 3 business ventures, 2 career changes, and countless finding himself phases. I raised our brilliant daughter Zara, who sat beside me now, her graduation cap still perched on her head, her expression frozen in horror. From the corner of my eye, I could see Sienna Cale, Desmond's much younger girlfriend, shifting uncomfortably at the back table where she sat with people I had considered friends for decades. The same friends who apparently knew about the affair but never thought to tell me. The same Sienna who had attended our Christmas parties, who had once called me for advice about her career. With practiced calm, I reached into my handbag and pulled out a sealed cream-colored envelope. I placed it gently beside Desmond's plate. "What's this?" he asked, his triumphant expression faltering. "Something for you to read later," I replied, keeping my voice steady. I turned to Zara, whose face had gone pale. I kissed her cheek. "I am so proud of you, sweetheart. This day is still about your accomplishment." Then I stood, smoothed my dress, and addressed our stunned guests. "Please enjoy your meal. I wish you all a lovely afternoon. With that, I walked out of the restaurant, my head held high, feeling 50 pairs of eyes following me. The heavy door swung shut behind me, cutting off the beginning of anxious murmurs. Outside, the Savannah summer heat hit me like a wall, but I welcomed it. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely. Behind me, I heard the restaurant door open and slam shut, followed by Desmond's voice, no longer confident but high-pitched and frantic. "Leora, what the hell is this? What have you done?" I kept walking, allowing myself a small smile. The envelope I'd handed him contained the beginning of my revenge, one I'd been meticulously planning for months. I had always been the practical one in our marriage. While Desmond dreamed big and took risks, I maintained the stability our family needed. I was the one who saved for Zara's education when Desmond invested unwisely in his friend's restaurant venture. I was the one who worked extra hours as a finance manager at El Carta Corporation when his midlife crisis led him to quit his stable position to follow his passion selling handcrafted furniture. A passion that lasted approximately 6 months before he grew bored. My own dreams, opening a financial consultancy for women, were perpetually on hold. After Zara graduates, I told myself. After Desmond finds stability. 3 months ago, I noticed discrepancies in our joint accounts. Small transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Having spent 20 years managing our family finances, these irregularities stood out like red flags. I could have confronted Desmond immediately, but something held me back. Perhaps it was intuition. Or perhaps it was the growing distance between us over the past year. Instead, I began quietly investigating. What I discovered was worse than I imagined. Desmond had been systematically moving funds to a separate account for over a year. He had also been taking Sienna to expensive restaurants, purchasing jewelry, and looking at beachfront property, all while telling me we needed to tighten our belts for retirement. Then came the text messages I discovered when Desmond left his phone unlocked. Messages about their new life together. Messages about how he was finally breaking free. Messages about their plans for the day after Zara's graduation, the day he had chosen to make his grand exit from our marriage. What Desmond had forgotten, or perhaps never fully grasped, was that I had been a financial professional for 30 years. I understood money trails. I knew how to trace assets. And most importantly, I remembered the prenuptial agreement we had signed 28 years ago when I had more family money than he did. The agreement he had insisted upon, ironically, to protect his future earnings, contained a fidelity clause that would prove to be his undoing. While Desmond plotted his escape with Sienna, I was building my case. I consulted with attorneys. I documented every hidden transfer. I gathered evidence of their affair. I prepared divorce papers. I timed everything perfectly, knowing Desmond would want to wait until after Zara's graduation to avoid ruining her big day. What he didn't expect was that I would serve the divorce papers the morning of the graduation before his planned announcement. But with the papers still safely hidden in court records not yet accessible to him, what Desmond didn't know was that I was always 3 steps ahead. I didn't return to the restaurant. Instead, I drove to our home, a spacious colonial in Savannah's historic district that we had purchased 15 years ago. The house that Desmond had already promised to Sienna, according to text messages that he didn't realize I had seen. I parked in the driveway and calmly entered what had been our shared space for over a decade. Everything looked the same. The family photos on the walls, the antique grandfather clock that had been my father's, the worn leather couch where Desmond and I had once dreamed of our future together. Yet everything had changed. I went upstairs to the master bedroom and opened the closet. Desmond's clothing was already packed in suitcases, hidden in the back, ready for his planned departure tomorrow. I smiled at his predictability. He had always been meticulous about clothing, but careless about the important things. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from friends at the restaurant, from Zara, even from Desmond's sister Leona, who had flown in for the graduation. I responded only to my daughter. "Okay. This isn't your burden to carry. Enjoy your graduation day. We'll talk tonight. Love you." I had protected Zara from the truth for months, not wanting to overshadow her final semester with family drama. She would be angry that I hadn't told her, but I knew she would understand eventually. Zara had inherited my practicality along with her father's charisma, a powerful combination that had helped her graduate with honors. 3 hours later, I heard Desmond's car in the driveway. The front door slammed open. "Leora!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the house. "Where are you?" I was sitting in the living room, calmly reviewing documents on my laptop. I closed it as he stormed in. His face flushed with anger, the envelope clutched in his hand. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, waving the papers. "You served me with divorce papers today of all days." "I thought it aligned nicely with your plans," I replied calmly. "You wanted to start your new life. I'm simply helping facilitate the transition. You had no right to." "I had every right," I interrupted, my voice steady. "Just as you had every right to choose Sienna. We all make choices, Desmond. The prenup expired years ago," he said, his voice suddenly smug. "Any lawyer will tell you that." I allowed myself a small smile. "Actually, it didn't. Section 12 specifically states that the fidelity clause remains in effect for the duration of the marriage. Your lawyer should have explained that to you." "Oh wait, you didn't consult one, did you?" The color drained from his face as reality sank in. The prenup he had insisted upon to protect his potential wealth would now cost him everything. The house, the vacation property in Wilmington, his portion of our retirement accounts. His grand gesture at the restaurant had just become the most expensive announcement of his life. "You can't do this to me," Desmond said, collapsing onto the couch. "We built this life together and you chose to end it," I replied, "though not in the way you planned." Desmond's phone buzzed persistently in his pocket. He glanced at it, then ignored it. Sienna, no doubt wondering where he was and why he wasn't following their carefully orchestrated plan. "You've always been calculating, Leora. But this is cold," he said, trying a different approach. "What about our history? 28 years together means nothing." I studied him. This man I had loved for nearly 3 decades. The man who had held my hand through 2 miscarriages before we had Zara. The man who had once surprised me with a weekend trip to Asheville for our 10th anniversary. When had he changed? Or had he always been this person, and I had been too devoted to notice? "Our history meant everything to me," I answered truthfully. "That's why your betrayal hurt so deeply." His expression softened momentarily, perhaps seeing an opening. "Then maybe we can fix this. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, Desmond. This was a calculated plan spanning more than a year. You systematically moved our money. You looked at property with her. You planned to announce our separation publicly to humiliate me." His face hardened again. "You're exaggerating." "Am I?" I picked up my phone, opened the recording app and played his own voice. "After the graduation, I'll tell her it's over. Public setting is better. She won't make a scene in front of everyone." Then Sienna's voice. "And she has no idea about the money." Desmond again. Leora trusts me completely. That's her weakness." The blood drained from his face. "You recorded our conversations." Desmond stammered. "That's illegal." "Not in Georgia when one party consents," I replied. "And not when it's in your own home. I didn't record your private moments with Sienna. I'm not cruel. Just the conversations about your plans to defraud me." Desmond stood suddenly, agitated. "I need to make some calls." "Of course," I said. "Your attorney might be a good start. I'll be staying at Leona's tonight." "Leona's?" he sputtered. "My sister's house." He nodded. "She's quite upset with you, actually. She was the one who first spotted you and Sienna together last Christmas. She didn't tell me immediately. She confronted you first. You promised her it was nothing, that you would end it. When she realized you hadn't, she came to me." That was another blow he hadn't anticipated. Leona and I had always been close, but Desmond never imagined his own sister would choose my side. "Everyone's betraying me," he muttered. "Ironic, isn't it?" I gathered my purse and a small overnight bag I had packed earlier. You have until tomorrow evening to remove your things from the house. After that, the locks will be changed. As I headed toward the door, Desmond called after me, desperation in his voice. What about Zara? Have you thought about how this affects her? I paused, anger finally breaking through my calm facade. Don't you dare use our daughter as a shield, Desmond. You certainly weren't thinking about her when you were planning your new beachfront life with Sienna. His phone buzzed again. This time he looked at it and groaned. Problem? Yes. Sienna is at the apartment already. She's moved her things in. I couldn't help but smile. The apartment you put in both your names? The lease you signed last month. Desmond nodded, looking confused. You might want to check with the leasing office. That application was flagged for credit issues and never completed. The agent called our home phone to verify information. I handled it myself. I walked out the door, leaving Desmond to face the first of many consequences. His perfectly planned new life was unraveling faster than he could process. Leona lived in a charming bungalow across town, close to the university where she taught literature. When I arrived, she greeted me with a fierce hug. I just heard from Zara, she said, pulling me inside. Are you okay? I'm better than I expected, I admitted, following her to the kitchen where a bottle of wine was already open. I never thought Desmond would make such a spectacle, Leona said, pouring 2 glasses. The restaurant. In front of everyone. He's lost his mind. It was meant to humiliate me, I explained, accepting the glass. A public rejection so I couldn't fight back without looking hysterical. Leona's face darkened. My brother always did have a flair for drama, but this is beyond anything I expected from him. We settled in her sunroom, surrounded by potted plants and bookshelves. Leona had never married, preferring her independence and academic pursuits. Over the years, I had sometimes envied her freedom. What did you put in that envelope that made him so upset? She asked. I explained the contents. The divorce filing, the evidence of his financial deception, and most importantly, the prenuptial agreement that would leave him with far less than he had planned. The prenup, Leona mused. I remember when he insisted on it. Father had just given him that money for his first business, and he was so worried about protecting it. She laughed bitterly. The irony is delicious. My phone rang. I took a deep breath before answering. Mom, she said immediately, her voice strained. I'm coming over to Aunt Leona's. Honey, you don't have to. I'm already on my way, she interrupted. Dad is telling everyone you've lost your mind. That you've been planning this for months. He's saying horrible things. Course he was. Desmond always rewrote narratives to cast himself as the victim. Let him talk, I said. The truth will become clear soon enough. 20 minutes later Zara arrived, still in her graduation dress, but with her makeup smudged from crying. She fell into my arms like she used to as a child after a nightmare. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice muffled against my shoulder. I didn't want to ruin your final semester, I explained. You worked so hard for this day. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Well, Dad took care of ruining it anyway. We moved to Leona's living room where Zara finally got the full story. How I had discovered the affair, the financial deceptions, and the plans Desmond and Sienna had made. I knew something was off with Dad, Zara admitted. He's been different. Distracted, always on his phone. But I never imagined. None of us want to see these things in people we love, Leona said gently. My phone buzzed with a text message from Philip Anderson, my attorney. The emergency filing had been approved. The accounts I had identified were frozen, pending the divorce proceedings. Desmond now had limited access to funds, enough for living expenses, but not enough to follow through on the property purchases he had planned with Sienna. I showed the message to Leona and Zara. Good, Zara said firmly. He deserves it. My daughter's loyalty warmed me, but I wasn't naive. He's still your father, I reminded her. Your relationship with him is separate from what's happening between us. Zara shook her head. Maybe someday. But right now I can't even look at him. He hugged me this morning and told me how proud he was, all while planning to blow up our family hours later. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Leona went to answer it, returning moments later with a troubled expression. "It's Desmond," she said. "And he's not alone." I steeled myself as Leona led Desmond and Sienna into the living room. Sienna looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, her eyes darting around the room. She was 37. Not exactly a trophy wife, but still 17 years my junior, with shoulder-length blonde hair and the kind of confidence that comes from never having faced real hardship. Desmond, by contrast, looked furious. His earlier desperation had hardened into rage. "Leora, you need to stop this insanity," he said, his tone clipped. "Unfreeze the accounts. We can discuss this like reasonable adults." Zara stood up, placing herself slightly in front of me. "Maybe you should have tried being reasonable before announcing to everyone that you were leaving Mom." Desmond's eyes widened, as if just noticing our daughter. "Zara, this doesn't involve you." "Doesn't involve me," she echoed incredulously. "You blew up our family on my graduation day, and it doesn't involve me?" Sienna touched Desmond's arm. "Des, maybe we should go." He shook her off. "No, I'm not leaving until Leora agrees to be rational about this." Leona folded her arms. "My sister-in-law seems to be the only rational person in this scenario. You're the one who created this mess, Desmond." I remained seated, watching the drama unfold. For years I had been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over conflicts and kept everyone happy. That role was exhausting, and I had finally set it down. "The accounts will remain frozen until the preliminary hearing," I said calmly. "That's in 3 days. The judge will determine appropriate asset division at that time." 3 days. Desmond sputtered. "What am I supposed to do for 3 days?" "You have your personal account," I reminded him. "The one you've been funneling money into for the past year. That should be sufficient." Sienna's head whipped toward Desmond. "You have a separate account. With how much in it?" An interesting dynamic was emerging. Clearly, Desmond hadn't been entirely forthcoming with her either. He ignored the question. "This is vindictive, Leora. This isn't like you." "Perhaps you never really knew me," I replied. "Just as I apparently never really knew you." Zara turned to Sienna. "Did you know he was going to announce it like that at my graduation celebration?" Sienna had the decency to look ashamed. I thought he was going to talk to your mother privately. The announcement today was unexpected." Desmond shot her a betrayed look. Cracks were already forming in their united front. "I think you both should leave," Leona said firmly. "You've upset Zara enough for one day." "Zara," Desmond pleaded. "You understand that relationships change, don't you? Sometimes people grow apart." My daughter's face hardened in a way I had never seen before. "What I understand is that you're a coward who couldn't even give Mom the dignity of a private conversation. What I understand is that you were stealing from our family while I was working 2 jobs to help pay for my textbooks because you said money was tight." "Zara, that's not how it was." "It's exactly how it was," she cut him off. "Please leave, Dad. I can't look at you right now." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Desmond turned to go, Sienna trailing behind him. At the door he paused and looked back at me. "This isn't over, Leora. I'll fight you on this." I met his gaze steadily. "You're welcome to try." After they left, Zara collapsed next to me on the sofa, tears streaming down her face. "I've never talked to Dad like that." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. Sometimes standing up for what's right is painful. Leona brought us fresh glasses of wine. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. Indeed, I thought. This ending was just the beginning of something new. The preliminary hearing took place in a small courtroom on a rainy Tuesday morning. I arrived with my attorney, Philip, while Desmond came with a lawyer he had hastily retained, a young associate from a firm that specialized in corporate law, not family matters. Desmond's poor choice of representation was yet another consequence of his rushed planning. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and no patience for dramatics, reviewed the prenuptial agreement carefully. "This document appears to be in order," she said, looking over her reading glasses. "Do you contest its validity?" The young lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we believe the agreement has expired due to the length of time that has passed. Section 18 clearly states that the duration is for the term of the marriage plus any legal proceedings resulting from its dissolution," the judge read aloud. "There is no expiration date indicated." Desmond leaned forward to whisper urgently to his lawyer, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the evidence of systematic fund transfers appears to violate the financial disclosure requirements in Section 23. She shuffled through the papers, then looked up. "I am ruling to maintain the freeze on joint accounts pending full financial discovery. Mr. Bain's personal account will remain accessible to him. The family home will remain in Mrs. Bain's possession during proceedings, as stipulated in the prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause." Desmond's face flushed dark red. "This is outrageous," he muttered. The judge fixed him with a stern look. "Mr. Baines, I suggest you review the agreement you signed more carefully. This court will reconvene in 30 days for the full hearing after discovery is complete." As we left the courtroom, Desmond caught up to me in the hallway. "Leora, please. We need to talk about this reasonably. 28 years together has to count for something." "It counted for everything," I replied. "Until you decided it didn't." I walked away, leaving him standing alone in the courthouse corridor, the weight of his choices finally beginning to sink in. Word spread quickly through our social circle. Friends called daily, some offering support, others seeking gossip. I maintained a dignified silence about the details, simply saying, "Desmond and I are separating. These things happen." Meanwhile, Desmond's carefully constructed facade was crumbling. The financial freeze meant he couldn't follow through on promises made to Sienna. The beachfront property fell through. The luxury car had to be cancelled. 2 weeks after the hearing, Leona called me, her voice tinged with amusement. "Have you heard the latest? Sienna moved out." "Already?" I wasn't entirely surprised, but the speed was impressive. Apparently, she discovered Desmond's business isn't doing as well as he claimed. The substantial savings he talked about don't exist. She told her friend Jennifer that she didn't sign up to date a man with financial problems. I couldn't help but laugh. He always was good at creating illusions. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding. The financial security I had always maintained, separate from our joint accounts, gave me freedom Desmond hadn't anticipated. I rented a small office downtown and began setting up the consultancy I had dreamed about for years. My first clients were 2 women going through divorces of their own. Word of mouth brought more. I specialized in helping women understand their finances during major life transitions: divorces, widowhood, career changes. The work was immediately fulfilling in a way my corporate job never had been. Zara, who had accepted a job with a marketing firm in Charleston, called me regularly. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," she told me after I described my growing client list. "You're helping people during their worst moments." "I'm just doing what I wish someone had done for me earlier," I replied. "Preparing women for whatever might come." Being needed for my expertise rather than my caregiving was a novel and empowering experience. The final divorce hearing fell on what would have been our 29th anniversary, a fitting end to a chapter of my life that had lasted nearly 3 decades. Desmond arrived looking haggard. I later learned that his business was struggling without my financial support and guidance. Sienna was long gone, already dating a real estate developer from Savannah. Most of our mutual friends had distanced themselves from him after learning the full story of his deception. The judge upheld the prenuptial agreement in its entirety. Desmond left with his personal possessions, his struggling business, and the money in his private account, which, after paying his attorney, was barely enough to secure a small apartment. I retained our home, my retirement accounts, and 70% of our joint investments, exactly as the agreement stipulated in cases of infidelity. The justice was poetic. The very document Desmond had insisted upon to protect himself had become his downfall. As we left the courtroom, Desmond approached me one last time. "I made a terrible mistake," he said quietly. "Is there any chance we could?" "No," I interrupted, gentle but firm. "That door is closed." "I understand," he replied. And for once I believed he did. "I hope you find happiness, Leora. You deserve it." It was perhaps the first honest thing he had said to me in years. 6 months later, my consultancy, Bain's Financial Transitions, was thriving. I had moved from the small office to a larger space and hired 2 associates. I specialized in helping women secure their financial futures, particularly through major life changes. Zara visited often, proud of what I had built. "You know what's ironic?" she said during one visit. "If Dad had just been honest from the beginning, he might have kept half of everything." "Sometimes people can't see beyond what they want in the moment," I replied. The woman who had once defined herself as Desmond's wife and Zara's mother had discovered a new identity: mentor, business owner, and advocate. The envelope I had handed Desmond at the restaurant hadn't just been my escape plan. It had been the key to a door I never knew existed. Behind it I found not just revenge but reinvention. In securing my financial future, I had also reclaimed something far more valuable: myself.